Hey everybody, Chris here from the Off-Grid Skoolie. Just a little bit of a disclaimer before you start watching this video. I am not an electrician, neither is Aaron, and if you are looking to do your own solar setup, make sure that you hire someone that knows what they're doing. This video by no means is an example of what you should do. It's just an example of what I did for my solar setup. Thanks for watching.
I'm hooking up all these batteries actually now with the real terminal cables. You can see all these jumper cables. We're putting these all in parallel, so we're doing a 3x3 parallel. This is where all of the power consumers will go. This would be the load, and this is the line side over here. These terminals are going to receive the strings of batteries off of the pack here. So as I wire these up, it only takes 2 jumper cables to, of course, connect 3 batteries. But that last one off the end has to route around and connect to here. When we're hooking these up in parallel, you really need to try to keep your cables the same length. It does help over a longer period of time. The BMS that's in the lithium battery, the battle-borne batteries, will manage the load leveling of all of them somewhat, or very much. Sorry, lithium battle-borne guy there. I shouldn't use the word somewhat, as it is a good product there. But you can see if I was just doing it, I could make a cable that's literally like 10 inches long, and kind of, it would make sense. These batteries are going to get shoved around the corner. It would just be right there. But what we really want to do is size for the longest run of our positive strip of parallel. So if we go from here, I'm planning my run to go across here. It's going to get clamped in place and will connect. And what that tells me is that even though my other ones are shorter, I'm going to make these all equal length. So I'm going to take this length and just chop three chunks of this and not even think about it. By making them equal length, it gives all of the parallel strings the opportunity to have the same amount of resistance in the pack, and then therefore distributing the charge as close as possible. Depending on your pack geometry, you need to really understand the length of all of your cables and try to get them the same, because when you're pushing lots of amps at lower voltage, like 12 volts, it becomes a lot more critical. That's why we're using at least the 2-watt cable. 4-watt cable may be even necessary, but we're only going to be connecting a 3 kVA inverter to this, so about 3,000 watts at the most. If we had a larger inverter, we would be using 4-watt cable for these main runs back to it as well. They're pretty short right now, but everything's sort of distributed, so we don't need to have some huge single point of failure cabling right now. The terminals are on either ends because we're pulling the power from either ends of the battery strips. So if you were to look at this as one cluster strip of these batteries, we're going to pull the positive from this side and the negative from that side, which gives us an equal balance transfer of the electrons through the batteries. Battle-borne indicates that that is not as critical due to the BMS. However, it's just a good practice to keep in play here. You never know what's going on exactly in these proprietary or with other types of lead-acid batteries. You really do need to wire them that way. The idea then is that we have on the positive side a large system fuse, protection fuse. This is a 250 amp fuse. That gives us about 3,000 watts of power available at the inverter side, if you can compute that back. We have a big shutoff here, so we can just turn off everything upstream of it, and that follows around to this bus side here, and the bus has two cables for the inverter, and then there'll be some smaller cabling for the solar charge controllers here. I need to still do the load calc maths on this. I think this is 2 watts going to be totally fine, especially this run that's like literally 10 inches long. But for every length of wire that you're putting in here, you need to either protect it and calculate that you're not overloading the wire for the size that you've got. So on the ground side over here, it's similar in layout, except we don't have the voltage or the cutoff switch, and instead of a fuse we have a shunt. So this is the amperage shunt, which allows the whole system to be able to monitor the amperage that's going in or out of the system. Since we already know the voltage, that's the resistor calibrated. So to the far side in the corner is all the battery connects for the ground side, and then on the other side is where all of the accessories and actual components are hooked up. Put the bottle down. Now I'm riding on a merry-go-round.
I'm gonna get home in no time. In the meanwhile, I'm gonna rob you blind. Pointing and laughing and singing like, ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Ha ha ha
ha. So what I'm going to do is put my resistor across the preload here, kind of pre-charge everything over there, and then I'm going to turn this on, and that should be, something should light off over there. Looks like, I don't know if you got any lights yet.
There's lights.
Is there lights? That's
Everything's turned on.
So we'll turn the inverter on. So it's probably going to cry about low power. But technically your electrical panel's lit up right now. Your inverting and your breaker panel is on. And so your AC outlets are powered up too. So we can see the Victron panels starting up. We can see that the whole system voltage is 12.6 or 12.7 volts between these two guys. So you can see them kind of hovering. They should both always stay the same. There's some sort of alarm going on here, inverter on. I don't know. We'll figure what that one out means. But we can see here that the voltage on the battery monitor is showing. So we can see that we're drawing negative 2.4 amps at 12.7 volts. We got both chargers in here. The multi-plus is showing up inverting. So this thing auto detects all the devices right away. So when we hit pages, we can see that you get the same cool little screen that I get on my computer. That's basically our power system right now. The BMV system isn't going to know exactly what your power setup is until later, and I probably need to go figure out what these two blinking lights mean. But yeah, that just activated everything.
So the bus is powered by batteries.
Powered up by batteries right now off of your humongous pile of Battleborn batteries that you've got.
That is exciting stuff.
And then, oh, probably the BMV over here is lit up, so you can see this guy. This is what's supplying the insight into the battery bank over here, so it's connected. This is the thing that actually controls the shunt, and then it exports its data over the data lines back to the other guy. So we need to set all this up now. So power everything up. Now we're rewarded with more work.
Never ends.
No, it doesn't.
It's the mountain that grows 5,000 feet every day.
Exactly.
So that's awesome that these actually dim once you...
yeah, once you don't touch them, they kind of go away. I am re-terminating some MC4 connectors. We had to shorten these up. So these leads we'll talk about the system as coming from the combiner and the electrical equipment, and then going to the solar panels in this case. So MC4 connectors are polarized. There's a male and female side, and you need to make sure that you maintain the correct ends on all of them. So I am terminating a male output end, so that's going to go right into there, and then we'll have a negative output end. So this is PV array number 2 is this one, and PV array number 1 is this one. We're going to shorten. This is our master cutoff to de-energize any equipment downstream of this when it's sunny out. That way you can work on it and not get surprises. This one is a special switch rated at, look here, this is rated at 1600 volts DC, 32 amps, and it's got 2 circuits that cut off in this from an air switch. It makes kind of a big snap sound. This is a DC rated switch for photovoltaic installations. You can't just use breakers and stuff when you go above about 100 volts, or actually above about 48 volts. You get all sorts of surprises and stuff. You must use photovoltaic rated equipment to switch it off and on, or DC rated equipment at the correct voltage.
So right now we are jumpering the system.
You grab the tape up before you come up too?
Yeah.
Hi buddy. When you're hooking these up, position yourself in a way that if you, okay, so here's what happens with DC power. Like I said, this is super unlikely to happen. DC power makes it so you don't let go. If like AC power, you just go pow, and it's like it hurts and you know, whatever. DC power is like that. It makes all your muscles tension and clench up.
Yeah.
you could potentially clench on the cabling that has the water conduction, clenching you like this, and then you'll just slide off the fucking bus and break your back. So position yourself in a way that you're, one, not going to slide off the thing. Two, if that happens, I'm literally going to come running across the panels, breaking all of them, and knock it out of your hand, and we're going to have to start over. I don't think that's going to happen, but yeah.
Just in case.
Just in case.
Sun.
Please, son.
It's thinking about coming out.
Yep. Oh, look, look. Just in time to hook up your with high voltage. Perfect.
I know. I know.
I'm going to send the measuring tape over to you, and we're going to measure how far we need to bring that jumper back. Okay. Mind your left toe is kind of scraping. Keep it on. That's just pretty funny looking. Okay. Now we got our two strings. This is string number 2, which is the driver's side, and this is the passenger side string, and we're gonna cut these short, put my meter on it to make sure the polarity is correct, because the red goes to the positive side of the solar charger and the black goes to the negative. It should all be working, but I just like to check because reversing the polarity on this stuff is a bummer. So we have a string of 4 and then a 5th kind of angled off to the center line of the vehicle on the roof. That's what I call the driver's side. And then there's literally another one with another center one that's kind of beside it, like a kind of an L shape, on the passenger side, and those are wired into a series of 5 panels. So the voltage is stacking up on each of those panels to approximately, I think, 150 volts. Not sure. We'll find out here in a little bit. And then those two independent strings go to this switch right here. This master switch is a energy cutoff switch. It's set to off, so we have 1 line and 2 lines. This is labeled 1A and 1B, and then 2A and 2B. These then go to the independent solar controllers in the back. So they're actually combined after the charge controllers, not before, because the system is a 12-volt system. I'm going to cut these wires short, and I'm going to meter them to make sure that when I put my positive lead on my meter on the red and the negative lead on the black, that I see some amount of voltage in the right direction. So if I see that it's not working correctly, we'll have to rethink why we hooked red and black together this particular way.
So, this is the last major piece of the entire solar system in terms of getting it running.
That's right. So we're just sort of getting the last pieces terminated here. I'm doing it the slightly unsafe way, which is terminating live connectors. Normally you'd probably want to connect them up top, pick them in place before you connect this side, but at some point you have to actually terminate hot connectors if you're, or make some sort of jumper cable and connect stuff if you're going to work directly off the panels. The mating of connectors at some point is always live if you're in sunlight. So hopefully from now on we'll be able to use the switch and make it a bit safer. PV box, which isn't really a combiner anymore, it's just a breaker panel. We're going to turn on our breakers. They won't do anything yet because we haven't flipped the switch. And Chris, if you want, here you can watch this guy here, and it should do something theoretically.
If all goes well.
If all goes well. So you can see charging now.
It's changing.
Something will change. So there you go. So now you're getting charged.
$290, $300.
It's gonna kind of bounce all over the place a bit.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So the system is charging for the first time.
Yeah. That's great.
That's
Are both of these indicating charge? So
Yeah.
What is that showing? 113.1 battery.
Yeah.
And if we flip this through here, so we're 257 watts, 87 volts or so. And on this one, what? It's funny, that one's not.
This one might need to be.
Might need to redo that one.
You
know what I'll do is I'll do a firmware update on those next. Get those firmware updated. Grab my phone.
That is very exciting.
Here, so we'll see what the hell's going on by updating firmware on them first.
So, one of the great things about Victron is the different apps, different.
They have all these different tools, so I can get in here and list the devices and see them right away. I select each one, it's going to connect, it's going to cry about firmware out of date. So it's just a nice tool to do this right in here. Oh, maybe it's 6 zeros. I can never remember on these things.
Default password?
Yeah, there it goes. Yeah, it's six zeros. So we're updating one of those. I don't know which one. But, dude, you're actually taking charge in.
I know. It's very
Almost
exciting.
700 watts. So the screen's frozen on that one, but it's working. You can see there. So if you hit put your, on the screen up top, hit the center key, which is like enter, and then hit the right. So you can see that each of those charge controllers is putting in a certain amount of wattage there.
Mm-hmm.
I would be willing to bet that the second one that's a little lower wattage is the one facing north. The panels are angled to the north a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So firmware updated on one.
It's probably the one that's flashing. Boot.
The other one. Then we'll update the firmware on your battery monitor as well. Alright, so we have our two controllers. We already updated U. We're going to go to S. That's just the other device. So we're going to connect to it here. You can see we're making some power, or collecting power. This one hasn't been configured yet. Victron has some nice battery profiles. You can set all these other stuff, but if we go to battery, it's 12 volt battery. Right now the battery preset is user defined, but we're going to select one out of the list here. There's actually a rotary switch literally physically on the charge controller on the bottom, but we're not going to bother with that. We're going to select a preset, and I'm going to scroll down and just pick lithium iron phosphate. That's going to select our charge profile for this. You see all those things just auto configured for temperature and voltage and everything. So that it's really easy to configure these for lithium. Shout out to Technomadia folks for convincing Victron to add all these charge profiles in here for lithium batteries back in the day. So now we're charging. So we got 700 watts of PV, 92 watts of load, and it's still a cloudy, crappy, rainy Arizona afternoon.
That's exciting. So with the batteries are showing 100%, but as Aaron was telling me, right now the batteries just have no idea what their 100% is. So as they get more and more charged, that will become the 100%, and
right.
Then it'll work its way down from there.
Then when there's a discharge cycle again, it'll actually count down from 100% again.
So will this display, being that it's lithium, be able to track the percentage? Like now that you set that profile to lithium, well, can you set this one to lithium?
And so we don't set the actual color control thing. It's just a display showing all the decisions. It's the BMV 712 or 700 series shunt, and it's a little computer that's actually going to tell that thing what the battery is.
Gotcha.
So this thing is only reporting everybody and collecting the data in one place. So we're going to hit continue here on that. We're going to select the battery monitor here, and you can see we still are more firmware. So we went from 2 to 4. So here we go. Just all the updates are going in. Thankfully we got good cell phone service here. So, but man, updating these things is so easy. It's just like Bluetooth done. Once we're up to date on these, we can, if your color control has an internet connection, we actually probably need to share an internet connection with that at some point. We have your Macintosh or something. We'll update the firmware on that guy, and then in the future, if the color control has internet connection, you can update the firmware from all the other devices from color control. We'll have to plug in my special dongle and stuff for the inverter to update its firmware to latest. That's a little more involved and a little scarier because I'll check the numbers again just to be sure. We may not have to do an update on that. They're far and fewer between with the big charge controllers.
I think that Battleborn actually did a firmware update before it left the factory.
Okay, yeah. So I have all the ROM. So I have the account. You have to actually have an account for the pro stuff for Victron. It's free to sign up or whatever. But you got to get the big list of firmwares and match up the serial numbers because there's like large CPU and small CPU versions and different. You got to be really careful because if you flash the wrong firmware on the inverter, you can turn into a big blue brick, which we don't want to do.
Preach.
Woke up with a black eye today. When they ask me why I've got nothing